They're carrying over from the wars we're seeing here in Asia. But shifting the focus now to China, Nina, manufacturers there had a relatively good month in March. That was the first time in 4 months that Chinese manufacturing activity has grown. Official figures released on Friday show China's PMI for March rose to 53.4. That's just over 1 point, up from February's 52.2 reading. Now, a number above 50 shows an expansion in manufacturing from the previous month. And staying with China, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce says the country's outbound direct investments will probably exceed foreign direct investment into China in the next 5 to 10 years. The unrest in northern Africa and the Middle East cut Chinese investment abroad. But here are the statistics according to the ministry. China's outbound direct investment, or ODI, in the non-financial sector hit $59 billion in 2010. Political turmoil has caused domestic businesses to suffer setbacks in Africa, which is the prime destination for China's international projects. In the first 2 months of 2011, the value of China's newly signed contracts in Africa fell 53.2% to $3.47 billion US. Of course, that's because of all the turmoil there. China's contracts in Algeria are down more than 97%. Its contracts in the UAE dropped 54.2%. And as the civil war rages on in Libya, Chinese contracts there have fallen by more than 45%. So China clearly has a foothold in Africa, but will the recent turmoil there have a long-term impact on Chinese investments in the region? To shed more light on this picture, Duncan Innes-Kerr joins us now live from Beijing. He's a senior economist at the Economist Intelligence Unit, which is an independent research group. Duncan, great to see you. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's first start with the China-Libya connection. According to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, China has 50 major projects in Libya worth about $19 billion. Can you give us an idea of what kinds of projects these are and what will happen now that the operations there have suspended?
Yes, sure. China's got a lot of operations in Libya. In 2008, for example, Libya saw over $10 billion in contracts, construction contracts signed. That was by far and away the biggest amount of contracts in Africa. And I think that it really is a reflection of the fact that China is building a lot of projects in Libya. These aren't so much investment projects where it retains assets on the ground afterwards, but where it's been hired to build out, for example, a road, a railway, a petrochemical complex, or something like that. So it's been very active in that side, and obviously there's been a great deal of disruption as a result of what's been going on in Libya recently.
And because these contracts have been suspended, of course, we don't know what's going to happen politically, whether or not there will be a new regime. But let's just say there is a new regime later on down the road. Will these contracts be honored, and can China go back in and continue with these projects?
I think, generally speaking, when it comes to hiring contractors for this type of project, the new government, if there is a new government, tends to be very pragmatic, tends to go for sort of the same factors that drove the old regime, the cheapness of Chinese contractors, their ability to build quickly and on time. And we saw, for example, in Iraq, although the new regime in Iraq was vastly different from the one that existed under Saddam Hussein, that had initially built up a great deal of business with China. The new regime has also been quite sort of happy to accept Chinese investment, Chinese contractors building its projects. So I think ideology and the association between the old regime and the new regime, it tends to not be so important when governments are hiring Chinese firms to build out their projects.
Let's broaden this out to a more global perspective. China has diversified its projects around the world. They've got investments in Russia, South America, Australia, pretty much everywhere. So will the instability in Africa really drag down its progress in investments?
I don't think it'll drag it down, but it will make it increasingly aware of the sort of political risks that are attached to doing business on the international stage. I think it's worth saying that the government was already becoming more and more aware of this as the volume of business that it did internationally picked up. For example, last year it instructed banks to develop their own risk models that look not only at economic risk of doing business in foreign markets, but also at the political side of the stability of regimes and so on. So the government has been on top of this issue, and I think this will only strengthen its focus on issues like political risk going forward.
All right, Duncan Innes-Kerr from the Economist Intelligence Unit joining us live from Beijing. We appreciate your insight. Thank you.